and we are going to jump in. Cool. All right. So as I go through this, please, if you have any questions or anything like that, comments, feel free to just let me know and jump in. But essentially today, what we're going to talk about is how we might each think about our food, our needs, and potentially establishing reasonable boundaries around food. Also, we're going to talk some specifics today around pieces that you may want to consider including in your food plan as almost like establishing a baseline of health and again, that focus on being things that we do want to include as opposed to at least what I see a lot of out there in the world of restricting and things we don't want to eat. And then as well in this, being in sync, if you will, with the chakra focus of this week is also around an element of pleasure around our food. And this does connect to that restriction note that I just shared, in the sense that we can receive pleasure from eating certain foods in the sense that we enjoy them or they were made with love, all of that kind of stuff, and making sure that we're understanding that exists, and how do we mindfully include those things that we love in our plan. So with that all being said, this week, excuse me, let me just move these guys. Okay, cool. Trying to move our videos. There we go. Cool. All right, so this week's session will support you in understanding how to make healthy food choices that support your goals, how to manage treats, and potentially setting up reasonable boundaries around food that fit with your lifestyle, right? I'm going to prompt you with some questions to think about. We're going to go through some baseline focuses around food, and then we'll come back to those questions at the end and see if there's anything that has come up for you that you do want to discuss or look further into. Additionally, as I mentioned, it's important to satisfy pleasure through food in a thoughtful way, and also make sure that you're getting an appropriate baseline of foods that we need for health and longevity. So we are going to chat about balance amongst our food, and also talk about strategies that you can start using immediately. Cool. So understanding your goals, your need for boundaries, and potentially your comfort around your food choices. I'm going to share these questions now. And as we go through this, just kind of keep them in the back of your mind. And certainly if anything comes up for you that you want to jot down or keep in mind for yourself, by all means. And then at the end, let's come back to them and think about anything else that you want to. And this is basically what I just said. So one question to consider could be, what are your current goals, if any, around food and nutrition? And it's okay if you don't feel like you have one right now, that's all right. Is there anywhere in your life that a reasonable food boundary might be helpful? What would make you feel more comfortable with your food and nutrition? So is there anything that, any holes for you in either your understanding or, not sure how much to eat or what food groups or anything like that? Is there anything that would make you feel better about your current understanding? How would you like to make your choices around your food? Potentially, would a mantra or a statement be helpful to support you? And so these are the pieces that I want us to kind of have in the back of our minds. We're going to jump in now to some details or perspectives around food that are important as well. And these speak to, I hate to keep using this word, but really a baseline of health. So how can we make sure that we're getting, appropriate vitamins and minerals? How can we make sure that we're, maybe not eating too much sugar, what that means for each of us, right? So the first piece I want to bring up today is around food quality. And this really speaks to to simplify it, processed versus unprocessed foods. Okay, so what does that mean, right? An unprocessed food, which is where we want to gravitate mostly towards, are potentially single ingredient foods. So things that are in itself a thing, right? An apple is a single ingredient food, right? Chicken is a single ingredient food. And so those are potentially healthier options. Many times these items are not packaged. So taking that apple as an example, you can buy a singular apple most of the time without a package. Maybe they're bagged, a bunch of them, but you get what I'm saying, right? They may not have a specific nutrition label. So it's not, again, a packaged item, maybe doesn't have that visual for you on it. And if you think about most shopping centers, these items are located on the outside ring of the store most of the time, right? Farmers markets, butcher shops, all of that are where you get the most, direct, right, feed of food. And it's in its natural state, right? This might be the best way to think about it, that there are no ice cream trees. And by all means, I am not saying we should not eat ice cream. I love ice cream and have it regularly. However, this idea can help us kind of differentiate between our food choices, right? Cool. So what are some of the benefits of gravitating mostly towards these kinds of foods, right? There are fewer additives. So it's the most natural form of certain foods. They're rich in nutrients and vitamins. They tend to have a lower sugar content. And in this case, we're talking about added sugars, right? Certainly fruits have some sugar, but that's a naturally occurring sugar that we can kind of worry less about. And with most unprocessed foods, they have this low or no sugar. They contain antioxidants, which can help support your heart health, cholesterol levels. Better for the environment, right? Less processing that food goes through, there's a less byproduct. Higher in fiber, right, which helps with our digestion and really gut health in general. Potentially high in healthy fats that we need. They promote gut health, may help prevent overeating because they're more filling. And here the focus is on including more unprocessed foods, not necessarily restricting less nutritious foods. And this might also be, again, a byproduct, right? In focusing on including certain things, we might naturally let certain things fall off our radar or at least be decreased potentially. Eating more unprocessed foods helps eliminate nutrient or vitamin deficiencies, and they can help boost your immunity, right? Decrease inflammation. That's a general overview, right? I found this particular study that I'm going to share with you to be striking in its differences, right? So there was a study done, I think it was within 5 years ago, so recently, processed versus unprocessed foods. So this is what happened. A group of people were served either, actually it was specifically McDonald's, like fast food type food, or a buffet type of fruits, veggies, chicken, that kind of thing, right? Processed versus unprocessed. When people were eating the more ultra processed foods, right, that McDonald's type stuff, they consumed calories 50% faster when eating minimally processed foods. So that means that, like, literally calorie for calorie, they're eating doubly as quickly, right? Eating the not as great food choices. And this is important because it takes time for us to kind of connect our brain and our gut, right? So it takes time for our body to tell us that we're full. And so we can eat foods much faster before that alarm goes off saying you're full. And it takes time for that connection to catch up, right? This is also why it's critical to eat slowly and mindfully. But subjects consumed more calories of processed foods compared to the same quantity, like volume, of unprocessed foods. Oops. And so what can we learn from this, right? Actually, if I could just further explain the study for 1 second before I jump ahead. What actually the format of this was that they gave people a specific amount of time to eat processed foods, a specific amount of time to eat unprocessed foods, and then they had them switch. And what happened was people who came from eating more processed foods ended up eating more unprocessed foods. Whereas when they switched, they started eating more healthy foods. And when they went to the processed foods, ended up eating less. And so what can we take from this? When we have mostly high quality foods, even when we have things that are maybe not as great for us, it is still not as big of an impact as vice versa, right? So I bring this up just to kind of further underline this point that our food quality is important. And certainly, calories are important. Certainly it matters how much protein you get. But if we were to simply focus on processed versus unprocessed as being most of our energy around food, that would be of benefit. So anyway, just kind of sharing more. So how can we, each of us, establish a healthy baseline of foods? A couple of things really stick out to me that I would like to share with you now, and maybe you can think about how close or how far you are from these items, and then that's maybe where we can start to establish some of the goals of foods that we want to include. So the very first piece is focusing on foods or beverages that we want to include in our food plan speaks to our health and working towards our goals, as opposed to focusing on foods we want to avoid. I imagine that you've all experienced or heard that saying of like, don't think about the pink elephant. And then that's exactly what's in your head, right? So this kind of speaks to that point. If we're always focusing on what we're trying to not eat or not buy or monitor the amounts of, that's going to drive us crazy. Equally, if we're focusing on, oh, I want to include this many fruits and veggies, or I want to include this much protein, or I want to drink this much water, it's much easier mentally to keep that tally than the other way around, right? So if it's possible to kind of tweak our thoughts a little bit to speak more towards the things we want, that's going to be a huge benefit. So here are some places to start. Drink mostly water. Point one. What we would want ideally is to work up to half of our body weight in ounces per day. So if I weigh 150 pounds, I'm going to aim for about 75 ounces of water per day. And the key here is the work up to statement, right? Depending on where you're at the moment, this could be a path, right, to get to ideally that 75 ounces or whatever it might be for each of you. With this being said, if you're already someone who drinks a lot of water, great, keep doing that, right? Awesome. Next, it would be awesome if we could eat at least 3 to 5 servings of fruits or veggies per day. And one serving is equal to about a cup, which is about a fist-sized portion. Okay, so this is what you can use as an indicator of serving size. And I did write a note here that there's typically more room for freedom here. If it's more than a fist, that's okay. If it's a little bit less, that's okay. These are what we would call calorically light and nutrient-rich foods in a good way, right? So it's okay to have a little bit more, but if you're thinking about your filling your plate or grabbing a snack or something like that, using our hands as measurement can be super helpful because most of the time they are proportional to our bodies, right? So we can use them to kind of help us make choices. So 3 to 5 servings of fruits or veggies, about a serving about the size of your fist, right? We're going to keep rolling on this hand measurement, right? Ideally, again, we would have at least 3 to 5 servings of protein per day. And one serving is about 4 to 6 ounces, which is about the size of your palm. So let's say chicken, for example, right? If I'm having, a piece of chicken and it's about this size of my, the meaty part of my hand here, that's going to indicate about 4 to 6 ounces, right? Certainly some thickness might vary and that's okay. But in general, if we can think about our protein as being here, that would be awesome, right? And proteins, in case this is helpful, include meats, eggs, dairy, maybe it's more of a plant-based protein sources, tofu, edamame, those kinds of things. But if we can aim to include some more protein, that would be huge. And if you're someone who likes a protein shake occasionally, that can also count as a protein serving. So include that as well. And here's where we get into this conversation of pleasure and maybe treat management. Consider setting a reasonable target for treat intake per day. Treats can be anything that is overly processed. So if we think back to that list we were talking about at the beginning of processed versus unprocessed foods, these are where our treats fall into place. Anything that is overly processed, super sugary, this can include many packaged items. And I certainly don't mean to demonize all packaged items. I know it's not that simple, but this is potentially a helpful way to think about it. This is partially my opinion as well. I do not believe in restricting food fully unless it causes you an adverse reaction. So you're allergic, you know, it makes you feel sick to your stomach. Like that's the separate conversation. However, outside of that, in my opinion, all food is food, right? There are no good foods or bad foods. It's just where we include them in our own specific food plans, and how do they speak to our goals. So with that being said, I do believe in setting a reasonable limit for treats. And this is partially speaking to the conversation about boundaries. So you might even consider, are there other areas in your life where their boundary might be helpful? So for me, it's 0 to 2 treats per day based on how I feel. And this number can be adjusted from where you're starting from. So if you're someone who is eating 5 treats per day, maybe we start with the goal being 4 and then, or 3, you know, and make it reasonable for you. And in general, with this all being said, we want to aim for mostly whole unprocessed foods. I hope that's clear at this point. But if you were to drink your water, eat fruits and veggies, eat your protein, manage your treats, I imagine most of our goals could be accomplished within that. All right. I would like to give us a couple of thoughts around treats, in the sense that we do still want to include them where it's appropriate, and we want to take pleasure in some of the things that we eat, even if they are more calorically dense and not as nutrient rich. That's okay. But how can we do so in a thoughtful way? Treats are a part of life, right? Notice here that I also use the word treat as opposed to cheat, right? Some people talk about having a cheat meal or whatever. And in my opinion, when I call it a cheat meal, it makes me feel bad about it. I feel guilt or some negative association with that thing. So if we can even shift our language around these things, that can be helpful too. I want you to feel comfortable at a birthday party, a wedding, a celebration, right? It's not realistic for us to think about never having, you know, some kind of party again, or, you know, not participating in having cake at your nephew's birthday or whoever it is, right? Keeping this in mind as well, you never have to earn your food or treats. A workout does not necessarily give or take permission to eat. If anything, it might be considering how hungry you feel at that time and how much of your serving does that contribute to, right? Understanding as well how or if treats fit into your life is huge. If you, again, how many treats is reasonable for you? And then planning them out is sometimes easier to avoid temptation outside of that. So again, if I'm having 0 to 2 treats per day and I know I would like to have a serving of ice cream later, great, I can keep that in my mind so that maybe when somebody brings donuts to work, I can easily say, no, thank you, I know I'm having ice cream later, right? This understanding of how treats fit is also huge in the sense of your goals, right? So if you're someone who is this weekend competing in a bodybuilding competition, I probably would not recommend having ice cream today, right? But if you're someone who's just looking for general health and longevity, then it is okay to have something like that every once in a while. So understanding where your goals fit in this conversation is also huge. All right, I'm going to give you one suggestion for as you're kind of considering these boundaries or places in your life where you would like an easier time making choices around your food. here is a strategy. I call it a pattern interrupt. And this strategy can be used to pause your actions and consider what you actually want or need. So when you feel the want to indulge or have something that's maybe a little bit off your plan, and really this strategy can apply to lots of different pieces in our life, but since this conversation is about food, that's where we're going to center it, but keep it in mind if it applies to other pieces. So I invite you to ask yourself a couple of questions. 1, are you actually hungry? If you are, have a healthy or filling meal or snack, right? So again, using that donut to work conversation that I just brought up. Somebody brings donuts to work and I want one, I can pause myself and say, am I actually hungry? Should I maybe have my meal or snack first and then see if I still want that donut? Okay. Am I actually thirsty, or am I behind on my water? Sometimes if we're not having enough, or if we don't feel hydrated enough, that can impact our want for sweets or sugars or treats. If you are, drink your water. Now, 3, this is where we come to our decision around this food. If you still want that treat, after those first 2 pieces are taken into consideration, serve yourself a moderate portion, really enjoy it, like savoring every bite, and there's no need to feel bad about it afterwards. So continuing with that donut example, pretend I had my lunch that I had planned, my water is great, it's where it needs to be for the day, awesome, I still want the donut. Cool, I'm gonna go have it, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna really enjoy it, right? How often have you eaten something and been like, I didn't even taste that, right? So really taking the time to appreciate what you're having, enjoying it, cool, and moving on after. Now, the last piece here is, are you still feeling something around that after? So again, continuing with this example, if I want another donut, but I already had one, right? What else might be going on? Am I stressed? Am I sad? Am I mad? Am I experiencing some kind of feelings that's making me want to eat? Am I overtired? Do I have a conversation that needs to be had with my partner that's weighing on me? Whatever it is, sometimes those things cause us to want to continue to fill the hole with snacks, right? And so if we can learn to recognize, what are the things that happen that cause me to want to eat more than I even feel hungry for? And then B, personally, what are my own strategies that I can use to help myself look deeper at or address those feelings? So is it setting up a time to talk to my partner about something that's bothering me? Is it, taking time to take a couple of breaths so that I feel less stress? Am I going to set a bedtime for myself so that I make sure I get enough sleep? Whatever it is personally, those are going to be the critical next steps. So I invite you to use this strategy for anything that comes up around your food, and helping you also to establish that baseline of what you need. As I said before, starting to notice and look at where those triggers, for lack of better words, come up for our food, how we use our food. This is part of how we change our relationship to our food and how we address how we use it. And this is sometimes tricky to grasp. We are 99% responsible for what we eat. So take positive ownership of the choices that you're making, right? Sometimes we are served food and we have little choice as to what we get. You're at a dinner party, somebody's cooking, this is what's served. Even in those situations, you could make the best choices possible of what you're going to actually eat, right? So I invite you to take ownership and make it a positive experience for yourself. So let's reflect back on those questions now. After we've talked about some of these specifics, let's revisit the questions. Do you have current goals around foods and nutrition? Again, if yes, that might help you direct some of your choices. If no, that's okay. You might consider making some though, if that makes sense. Is there anywhere for you that a reasonable boundary would be helpful? So take that treat example. 0 to 2 treats is it for me? Is there something else, another area in your life where that might be helpful? What would make you feel more comfortable with your nutrition? Is there holes in your knowledge? Do you need time to food prep? Do you need to make a shopping list? What are the things that could best support you? How would you like to make choices around your food? What could be different than what you're doing right now? Maybe it would be helpful to use those guides that I mentioned earlier around a certain amount of water, aiming for fruits and veggies, aiming for protein, right? When you check those things off, that's potentially a different way to make choices than what you're doing now. Does it make sense to create a mantra, right? Especially around all of these pieces that we brought up today? What identity do you want to create for yourself around your food? Maybe it's something like, I am confident in my food choices. Maybe it's, I eat to fuel my body. My health is important. Anything like that reflects what you're trying to get at in making your decisions could be super helpful to just kind of keep in your mind as you are making these choices. And with that being said, keep in mind as well that mantras don't have to feel 100% true when we start saying them to ourselves. And this might be familiar for some of you as well, but if it's maybe you don't feel confident in your food choices right this minute, but that is something that you desire, that is okay. Start to use the mantra anyway. All right, so I would like to allow you guys to take a second and make some notes around any of these pieces. And or share anything that came up for you in this presentation. Have questions, want to share anything that came up for you? Is there anything that you're looking to create a boundary around that I can help you with? Take a second, jot some things down, and feel free to unmute yourself if you feel so inclined.
Hello.
Hello.
So I have two goals.
Okay, great.
My gut health, and the other goal is, with time I stopped thinking about like the ideal weight. It's like I'm comfortable in my body. I feel comfortable like that. Yeah. But I used to be 90 kilos. And now I'm 65 kilos. I really want to see like 59 or 59.5. Like I just, it's the number 50 that.
Yep.
But my weight is, yeah, it goes from 65 and I would like jump into 70 sometimes. But it's, yeah, these are my goals. And that thing that I get to work on more. I'm getting better. I love cooking. I enjoy cooking. I'm mindful when I cook my own food. Yep. It's snacking that is yeah. If I quit snacking, I'll see that 5.
Yeah. Okay. A couple thoughts. Are you open to me sharing some things?
Yeah.
Cool. About the snacking piece, when you have snacks, is it because you're hungry or is it because you just want a snack?
It's a habit.
Okay, cool. So
yeah.
A couple things there. One could be planning for healthier snacks, right? So maybe it's speaking to those fruits and veggies types of things that we mentioned earlier. The other piece is it is possible to establish new habits if you want to, right? So maybe it's that you have a cup of tea instead of having, a snack if you're not hungry, right? If you're hungry, you should eat.
Okay.
The other piece is, do you feel like your meals are enough, right? So do you have breakfast and then a couple minutes later you're still hungry, or that's when you want a snack? That might be important to look at as well, because if we could kind of like beef up meals if they need to be, then maybe you're less likely to snack, right? Yeah. And with this all being said, snacking is certainly not a bad thing at all. if you need it. And so keeping that in mind is huge too. I had another thought around something. Oh, yes, the weight piece. Is the number actually important? Like, do you need to weigh a certain amount for any reason? Or is it just personal want?
Yeah, it's like if ever I started like my weight loss journey,
Mm-hmm.
I know that this is my ideal weight is 58 kilos.
Okay. I invite you to think as well, what are the body composition traits that you're looking for? Because if you could think about those items, maybe the number becomes less important. And not that you shouldn't care to get to 58, that's not what I mean. But if, say, you're at 60, but you can check all the boxes as to what the actual body composition looks like, maybe you can feel satisfied there, right? And here's why. If we don't think about the traits that go with it, hypothetically, we could continue to think, oh, now I need to be 57, and now I need to be 56. And, and it can continue to go that way unless we know what we're actually looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes so much sense. Yeah.
Cool. So you might consider thinking about what are you actually looking for in terms of body composition, or maybe it's your abilities at a certain weight. So like you can run a mile in 10 minutes, or you can, lift a certain amount of weight, or you can do a pull-up, or you can run after your kids or your dog or whoever, what else is going on at your ideal weight. And then if you still feel like 58 is it, cool, we can work on that. If that shifts a little bit and the number becomes less important, that's awesome too.
Yeah.
And as far as your goals go, how close or how far are you from some of those pieces that we were mentioning today? Sorry about that. Like fruits and veggies, like protein, like water, like treats.
Protein. I eat eggs in the morning, but yeah, protein mainly is I eat it because I need it.
Yeah, right.
That's it. This is how
okay.
This is my relationship with protein. It's carbs. I wanted to ask you, like, what is the servings for carbs a day?
Yeah. Yeah. So keep in mind too that fruits and veggies are carbs as well, but I imagine you're talking about heavier carbs, rices and stuff like that.
Yeah, rice.
Okay, cool. You can use this guy, a cupped handful right in here, for your serving sizes on heavier carbs. And you can think about each meal, right? If we picture your plate, that cupped handful on each meal. Otherwise, we want a protein at each meal and maybe some lighter veggies or fruits at each meal.
Okay.
Does that help? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, it helps. So you mean to both hands? Just kidding.
Just scoop up as much as you can and put it on your plate. Yeah. And here's the thing is
I got.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, consider where you're starting from as well. And we don't need to go from literally the cupped handfuls, right, to all the way down to just a littler bit.
Yeah.
If we can start to make shifts, maybe fewer heavy carbs, more protein, that will still point you in the direction that you're trying to go.
I do 5 tablespoons of rice.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not your problem.
Okay, good. As for prepping food, like, does it how do I start practicing baby steps? Because I never prep my food.
Yeah.
It's like I wake up, okay, today I'm eating this and this and this.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And that might be the first thing, is start with planning in advance one meal or snack. So maybe you say, like, this week for breakfast, I'm going to make da 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 da. And then you make a shopping list that accommodates those items.
Okay.
And then from there, you can gradually build until you have basically a complete week, right? This speaks a little bit to that treat piece too, was that sometimes when we try to do too much, like restrict every single sugary item we ever have ever, that makes it harder to be successful in the long run. So if you can start small with your planning, right? Plan or prep a couple meals or snacks and then progress from there, that will be important and helpful. And two, that if you're thinking about making sure you're including fruits and vegetables, make sure you're including protein. That's when we can check those items in advance and then progress from there, right? And then just as one note, if it is convenient to you to keep coming over the next couple of weeks to these classes, we're going to continue to build on these ideas as we go, right? And I'm going to record them as well. So don't panic if you can't make it, but just wanted to put that out there. We'll keep building on these ideas, right? So start small and progress from there is what I'm getting at. Cool?
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Like currently I've got COVID.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so I'm not like, I get my food on the door. But it's like I'm eating vegetables and and healthy.
Good. Cool.
Yeah, vitamins.
I hope you
and
feel
so
better soon, and we'll keep working on it, all right?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Anybody else want to share any thoughts, questions, anything like that?
So I think the goals are interrelated. So my first goal at the moment is to have a healthy relationship with food. Because I have been recovered for quite a while from my eating disorder, but I noticed that my relationship with food has been off lately. So that, and also making sure that I'm having healthy meals, like avoiding I'm mainly vegetarian and vegan, so I'm trying to make sure that I'm having my needs covered, so I'm not falling to the part where I have to take a lot of supplements and stuff.
Yeah, totally. And I appreciate you sharing. Thank you. And you might even consider a similar approach to what we were just talking about with Aya too, is if there's any loose plans that you can start making to do exactly what you're talking about and make sure that your bases are covered, that could be hugely beneficial, right? So, maybe if you're looking at your day and thinking about what are some protein sources that I can have that fit with my vegan, vegetarian needs, right? Or, how much of these pieces do I need? Making sure that you have fruits and veggies, water, those kinds of pieces. Do you imagine something like that pre-planned could be helpful?
I kind of do like meal prep, but it's not like for the whole week. What I do is I would do the grocery shopping once or twice a week, and I would usually cook a meal or two that will last me 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
And usually I would like have my greens in the fridge clean, just so I would add the cucumbers and dressing.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Sometimes work, I'm a bit in a rush in the morning, so sometimes I skip breakfast because I don't really have time. So, and also my other issue is with caffeine, because I do tend to over caffeinate when I'm hungry or I want to avoid food, so it ends up happening like that. So currently I'm limiting it to maximum 3, not more than that, because I can go up to 5 coffees.
Yeah. And you know what, is noticing that trend is the first piece of making adjustments on it. This is how I feel when I have more caffeine than I need. And so I'm going to make sure that I monitor and create a reasonable boundary. Love it. Right. Shoot, another thing came to me and now I forget. If you're open to a suggestion, are you, or do you, have you had any vegan protein powders?
I do have some, like sometimes I would add it. I use Sun Warrior, and sometimes I would add a bit
I've
of
heard of that.
this in the morning.
Very cool. Yeah, and maybe that
Um,
could become a breakfast quick thing. And then so at least you're having something to kind of jumpstart your day. And I wonder if that would help curb the caffeine wants, more
I
tone
think
those 3
also
cups.
part of that is maybe I'm not having enough healthy fats in my diet, because also I have been having like this hair fall for quite a while, and I've tried like pretty much everything.
Mm,
So I think it's either that or it's a combination. So sometimes I would do like to add some nut butters or coconut oil, MCT oil to my
mhm,
smoothie.
mhm,
So I think I just need to maybe do more meal prepping here and there.
mm.
And
Yeah.
also not like avoid reading the labels, like the nutrition facts part.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I hear you. Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, and keep in mind too that healthy fats will help you feel fuller longer because they're slower digesting. Yeah, so there's more bang for your buck there, 100%. Yeah, cool.
And I'm also trying to work through the treats part, because there are certain foods that I kind of label as good or bad.
Mm,
So I'm trying to desensitize myself towards them, which I don't know how this is working out, but sometimes I'll find myself obsessing.
mm.
So that part is still that. I'm trying to do like one treat per day,
Great.
just
Yeah,
to give myself that.
yeah. And you know what? If I could give you one piece of advice on that, is if you notice yourself classifying foods as good or bad, ask yourself, what do I actually mean by that? Because if you say this is bad, and then you say, what do I actually mean by that? Your answer might be, it has a lot of sugar. And then you can say, oh, how much sugar have I already had today? Is this an acceptable fit in my day? And then you say yes, and then you feel, oh, guilt-free about it, right? So asking that follow-up question of what do I actually mean is huge in turning or trying to change the good bad. And also, I imagine, Sarah, that will speak to your relationship with food as well. When we get to the factual details about food, that's where we see changes around relationship with food.
For me, I usually follow the 90 healthy and the 10%, which is the whatever I'd like to have.
Yeah,
Because
great.
I realize like I tend to gear towards the clean eating, which I realize is not sustainable all the time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm trying to myself, even though it's 10 or 20% of my diet that goes to just having the treat.
Mm-hmm.
And also, which another thing is, because I just finished like my health coaching certification, so I've got a lot of nutrition information. So I kind of got confused with the whole thing of
Yeah.
what I should follow, what should I follow. Because you have people who are like, on your cravings and, eat what you want. And then you have people telling you stay away from sugar. So it's like, or stay away from certain oils. So it's kind of confusing sometimes.
100%. And knowing the facts is one thing, and understanding how things fit for you personally is a different thing. And so this, I imagine, comes back to your goals too, right? And so you might look at your goals and think, what approaches make the most sense for me, right? And then try to, follow that path as best as possible, and know that trial and error is real, right? What happens if I have an extra sugary treat? What happens if I avoid this oil, or, whatever the things are, and see how it happens for you. And then that's where you're going to find that sweet spot for you and your health and your relationship with food, right? And again, we're going to keep working on it as well. So if you're available to keep coming, that would be wonderful. And I hate to do this, but I actually have to run.
No
I have
worries.
a memorial service I have attending this afternoon. So I hate to do this, but please message me, email me, anything like that if you need any further help or want to talk more about these specific things. But then, like I said, please keep coming to the chats if you can, right? Thank you all for sharing. I appreciate it very much. And yeah, I'll talk to y'all soon.
Bye.
Thank you. All right. Bye, guys. Thank you.